Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on your suggestion. This one very recent, so it goes to show that I look at suggestions all the way up to pretty much the time I'm about ready to make another video. So please keep them coming in because who knows, just might select yours 30 minutes after you just placed it as a suggestion. This one is one of the reasons again why I love doing this particular video series, because it introduces me to another fantastic looking cryptid. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's so otherworldly that it makes you so glad that there's a chance that it actually exists in this world. And so I'm talking about a cryptid that's apparently found in the Amazon rainforests of Brazil and Bolivia, and it is very, very unique looking cryptid, at least based on some of the claims that people have stated. And it goes by several different names, but at least for the sake of this video we'll go by its most common name, which is the cryptid called the Mapinguari. I hope I'm saying that name right, but that's how it's stated phonetically, the Mapinguari. And again, it is a cryptid that's found, you have to go to the Amazon rainforest of Brazil and Bolivia in terms of its homeland. And what you're looking at here, you can instantly see why I love doing this series and why it's so fascinating to talk about it, because quite a unique looking cryptid, isn't it? It's basically an amalgamation of like several different things all at once, most notably being its most distinct features, i.e. in some cases people reported with the one eyeball, and then also with a giant mouth in the middle of its stomach. Crazy stuff. So I'm going to explain all the details as possible, and then also sightings are a little bit rare, but at least there's one that purportedly shows an attack of some sort, so I'll explain that here too, and then finally discuss what it could be in actuality, which still stretches it to another fantastic region to talk about. So first, what is this Mapinguari? Let's talk about what it looks like. Essentially, think of it like as a giant sloth of some sort. Instead of being like, say, the size of a normal sloth, which is probably the size of a dog, here, this particular cryptid resembles something about 6 feet tall. So it is a gigantic creature. And in some iterations, some of the drawings and some of the other images that you'll see, people have represented him as being much larger as well. Its name, by the way, is a direct translation of either the words the roaring animal or also the fetid beast. Fetid meaning like a strong, repulsive, pungent smell. And these are two good reasons for these translations, because when it comes to itself, it's known to either have a very distinct shriek or roar of some sort, or also the smell. It has to be apparently a very strong smell, and I'll talk about both here in a minute. But first, again, the description as to what it is. With it being a giant sloth, it traditionally also has the long claws that sloths generally have. Anyone that has seen pictures or video of, let's say, sloths in the zoos, you know that they have those giant claws that they use to essentially hang on to whatever kind of vegetation or plant that they're dwelling in. No difference here. I mean, it has these giant long claws, but the difference is these claws are purportedly very, very powerful. So powerful enough, I mean, this creature, not just due to its size and its mass, but also apparently the muscles that it has, it's so powerful that it can tear apart trees all together all at once. So this is definitely something that you do not want to have a bad encounter with. At its extreme height, when people say that they've seen it standing on its complete hind legs as a form of, let's say, a counterattack, it can be over 7 feet tall, apparently. And then on top of that, its skin resembles what's called a caiman skin, and another unique feature is it purportedly has those backward feet that I've talked about within other cryptids. I don't know where some parts in the world it seems like the unique distinct feature of certain cryptids is they don't have normal looking feet. Instead they have backwards feet, i.e. like the toes pointing backwards as opposed to pointing frontwards. That caiman skin, by the way, is supposed to resemble something on the lines of an alligator or a crocodile, at least underneath its shaggy fur. So that skin is supposed to be very, very hard, very resilient, because anything as far as attacks by people, either using some kind of, like, let's say, conventional weapons found around that area, like knives, spears, they don't seem to have much damage. And then also, if you go by the reports, arrows and bullets do not penetrate its skin as well. It's supposed to be a very, very hard skin. And then, of course, its most distinct features, it has, at least based on some reports, one eye rather than two, so it's more of like a cyclops. And then also it has a giant mouth in its belly. And this mouth is used both for eating purposes and then also apparently for attacks too. So very unique, distinct looking creature. It's not something that you want to be around with. By the way, the ways that you know that you're near this creature, I was talking earlier. The unique thing about this creature, and it's kind of scary when you think about it, despite its size, despite its mass, it apparently can move about the foliage within the forest very quietly, so much so that it's almost no noise at all. I don't know how it does it, but apparently it can stalk its prey so well that it produces little to no noise when it's moving through the foliage. So when you think about that, that's quite frightening, because here you are, it's kind of like the Hideaway, one of my favorite cryptids that I talked about who knows how long back. Here you are walking through the forest, and then without even knowing it, you have something essentially following you from who knows how far back. But luckily you would have some inclinations given to, like some key things given to you ahead of time to know that you have this thing, this Mapinguari, coming your way. Number one is that smell. I was mentioning earlier that that name of it translates to the fetid beast. People have reported that it has a horrid smell, like a putrid stench. I don't know exactly in what way, like if it smells like a rotting corpse or if it smells like something that hasn't been washed in who knows how long, but it's supposed to have a really, really bad smell, so much so that it kind of gives it away whenever it's nearby someone. So if you happen to be, let's say, just traveling in the rainforest and you're there in Brazil or Bolivia, and I don't know if you're there for work or if you're there for other purposes, but you suddenly realize that you're experiencing a strange pungent smell, far worse than anything that you would imagine, like let's say normally associated with an animal, then you could have this thing nearby. The second thing is also, because its name translates to the roaring animal, it's supposed to emit some kind of frightening shriek from the far distance. I don't know if this shriek is more like an alarm stating that it's on the hunt, or it's more like a warning, like stay away from my territory, but it's supposed to be a very, like a skin crawling type shriek. Like you do not want to hear this thing while you're in the forest. And no doubt if anyone hears it, it does its job, because those people, wherever they hear it in the direction of, it's wise to go straight the other way. You do not want to have this thing essentially coming across you at any point whatsoever. But those two things essentially give it away, so you kind of have an advantage if you either hear or you smell those particular items. How it attacks too, it supposedly, again, attacks pretty slow, but is ferociously done so. I don't know if it moves with its backwards feet faster that way, or if it swings around and uses its long claws to essentially mount an attack from above. I don't know. I don't have that information. The only closest thing I mentioned earlier, there's one report that was dated back in 1937, and it has to do with a report there in central Brazil that kind of ties into the fact that this thing is carnivorous, i.e. it eats meat, because for 3 weeks there was a claim that a Mapinguari was on a killing rampage of some sort. People started finding out that their cows were being killed left and right, so much so that there were over 100 cows altogether killed around that area. And then the most distinct feature was their tongues were ripped out from their carcasses. The interesting to note is that there were no humans attacked, and there were no reports of humans being found eaten. Everything is just basically the cows themselves being harmed. But that seems to be the only known instance of, I guess, the closest thing involving an attack of some sort by the Mapinguari. So whether it's purposely, let's say, staying away from humans, who knows, or it knows not to mess with them and just doesn't want to bother with them, I don't know. But people that have reported that they come into this presence, they state that its most common feature is it stands up on its two back feet, so much so that it's like at the highest possible height possible, almost as a form of defense. And it's very similar if you've seen grizzly bears when they stand up and they're doing that stance as a form of protection and as a form of defense. It's supposedly very, very similar to that. What's another strange thing about this Mapinguari, but the only distinct weakness this thing has is apparently it cannot be in water. I don't know if the water harms it altogether or if it just stays away from water for whatever other reason. Maybe it's allergic or it has a bad skin reaction, who knows. But it does not go near any rivers or any lagoons of any kind. It just tries to stay away from it altogether. So this is its only known weakness, which is kind of strange and bizarre, because when you're thinking of, let's say, the Amazons or the rainforest, it's called a rainforest for a reason, because there's a lot of rain involved. So how this thing is able to stay dry and try to get away from all the constant showers, I don't know, maybe, but no doubt it's figured out something in terms of being able to do so. But that's another way, I guess, to protect yourself is if you're ever being followed or, let's say, attacked by this thing, then just try to find something involving water. Maybe if you even have your own water near you, a water bottle or any other type of water nearby, just use it as a form of a weapon, and it's supposed to be all clear for you. As far as its, I guess, possible instances of what it could be, if we go by the cryptid side, and it's this amalgamation of so many different animals, then it is by far its definite own unique creature. It's one of a kind. As far as whether it's, let's say, a different, like a whole bunch of them all there, a whole civilization of them, I don't know as far as that part. But if we go again by that cryptid, then it's its own unique style. But there's another interesting facet, I was mentioning this earlier in the video, of what it could be, and it could actually be a long lost descendant, or maybe even a direct descendant of this creature, which is called the Megatherium, which was a beast, like a giant sloth of some sort, that lived a long, long time ago. This was during the time like when mammoths were around. This was a creature that lived, and it basically was just like everything was back then. It's a giant version of a sloth, but except it doesn't have, let's say, one eye and a mouth in its stomach. No, instead all it is just a giant sloth. And so there are those that theorize that this creature that the people are seeing there could in fact be yet another long lost creature from the prehistoric ages that has somehow managed to survive all these years and just procreated and created like a little mini civilization there, and that the reports that people are seeing are not of a strange otherworldly cryptid, but are in fact of this thing that managed to survive all those years. If that's the case, then I say that's really fascinating too, because again, you could have something from the prehistoric ages that is right there in Central America, just ready to, in South America, just ready to actually have a discovery done. So if anyone finds it there, let's say in Brazil, or if anyone finds it there in Bolivia, then you have a pretty good historic find, because you would have something that again has existed since the prehistoric era, and otherwise all we have now are just fossils, but here you have the real thing altogether. And then of course if someone finds it and it turns out to be a one of a kind cryptid, then that's a whole other world of discoveries right then and there. So what do you guys think? The Mapinguari, pretty unique cryptid, very, very fascinating stuff. Again, this is the reason why I love doing this particular series. If anyone has any more information as far as attacks. Again, for all the ferociousness that this creature has, it doesn't seem to have anything tied to, let's say, human attacks. But if anyone has any more information on that, that'd be great to hear. If anyone has any more information I may have missed, then that'd be great to share as well. So please post those comments, share them as always. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.